How would you like to grow your business the easy way, and in my humble opinion, the fun way, through speaking? Yes, you can literally speak your way to more business, and we can show you how. When I started my coaching business 15 years ago, I struggled making only $900 in the first 2 years. Yeah, you heard that right. Less than $1,000 in 2 years. The problem? I was busy running around to networking events and handing out business cards, trying to help everyone, everyone. Then I took the stage for the first time in my life and began speaking and teaching about the strategies I coached on. And when I really got my message dialed in, my business went literally from 3 figures a year to 7 figures. The secret I finally realized is that when you take the stage, you instantly become seen as the leading voice in your niche or industry. Today, we show entrepreneurs just like you and just like I was how to dominate your niche by becoming the leading voice, not just another expert. We run an incredible business mastermind speaker training program. It's called The Leading Voice. You guessed it. If you head over to leadingvoiceplatform.com/podcast and grab my free roadmap, 8 Pillars to Profitable Speaking. This free roadmap outlines the exact 8 secret weapons you need to truly become the leading voice in your niche. This is exclusively for my podcast listeners. You go to leadingvoiceplatform.com/podcast and start speaking your way to more business.
Speaking of getting booked, this podcast is about one thing:
getting booked to speak more. Whether you are an established speaker or a newbie, we want to see your career take off.
Hundreds of speakers are hired every single day.
And you are next.
Let's jump in with your host, Matt Brawning.
Hey, speaker. Hello, influencer. Welcome back to Speaking and Getting Booked. I'm your host, Matt Brawning. This show, as you already know, is about one thing. It's getting you to booked to speak more. Along the way, what we've been doing already, as you've probably noticed from our previous guests, is I'm always wanting to bring someone who books speakers on platforms, witnesses speakers on platforms, and really people that know how to get you into different areas to speak more. That's all what it comes down to. What I've found, though, is there's also, most of these people also speak for a living as well and have quite a successful career. My guest today is no exception whatsoever. She is the current programs chair for the National Speaker Association Arizona chapter. She's also an active member of Toastmasters. She's an international speaker herself. She even is a published author with a true crime memoir called Serrated and a domestic violence board game prevention board game creator. Stephanie keynotes and facilitates workshops on cultures of learning, strategic thinking, and collaborative accountability. She's a mastermind group leader as well for business owners ranging from marketers to designers, financial planners, and recruiting firms, helping entrepreneurs grow and build their businesses, increase sales, revenue, and market share. Welcome to the show, Stephanie Angelo. How are you?
I'm doing great, and even better now that I'm talking with you.
Oh my gosh, look, you have fast become one of my favorite people to connect with. I know early on it was a little bit hot and heavy as we were trying to get scheduled in to go speak at the Arizona chapter. As we record this, I'm coming out in a few days. So I'm going to be out with you, having dinner, speaking, and bringing some value on NLP from the stage for the members out there. And I'm really looking forward to spending some time in the sunshine with you because I'm sick of Grand Rapids.
Yeah, we are looking forward to it too. And you're getting out here at a good time of year when it's not going to be ungodly hot.
I feel the same thing. So like everyone loves to go to Phoenix and Florida except for in the summer.
I have friends in Germany that have texted me and said, well, we want to come visit you this summer. And I've said, no, you don't.
No, you want to go when it's nasty in Germany. Come over in the winter. It'd be perfect. So let's jump into some speaking stuff. So Stephanie, how long have you been speaking? When did you start your career as a speaker? And how long after that, if any length of time, did you start getting involved in like serving and being a part of like the NSA and things like that?
Goodness, that's a multifaceted question.
Well, let's start
I
with
was
how long have you.
always speaking, when I worked internal human resources, I was always doing training programs and that kind of thing. And many years ago, literally 2001, this is how I got started with it. I was volunteering for the Arizona State SHRM conference. SHRM stands for Society for Human Resource Management. And I was the programs chair, and I said to the committee, I have no idea where to find speakers. And somebody said to me, well, what about National Speakers Association? I was like, well, who are they? So I looked into it, and that's how I found my first speakers. It was actually one of those people that I brought in and hired to speak at the SHRM conference who mentored me and brought me to my first NSA chapter meeting in 2002. And then I qualified for professional membership in 2003. So I have been a member. Actually, this is going to date the podcast just a wee bit, but this is the month of my 15th anniversary as a professional member.
Wow. Well, first
Yes.
off, congrats. That's because being a professional member means that you have created revenue as a speaker, correct?
It does. You have to
You can't be a
basically
professional member
prove it in a
if you want to
sense.
speak.
Yeah. For people that are early into it, they have what's called a candidate program. Some people call it an academy. They can run a little differently, but those are for people that have not reached the criteria yet for professional membership. And I reached professional membership in 1 year, and usually takes a couple. And so that was a really great thing. And I was doing that because I was doing a lot of career transition training at the time.
Well, congrats on that. I think that's absolutely awesome. So again, guys, if you're listening to this and you are a brand new speaker, remember one of the things to do is get involved in a membership organization or maybe multiple as soon as you can. Be a part of something and start going after. Because like to set a goal in your future, if I've made no money directly from speaking, to make some money is a really good goal to start. The other thing Stephanie just mentioned was the SHRM conference. So Stephanie, is that SHRM? Is that what it is? Or
Mm-hmm.
is there a little secret E in there? I want to put that on the show notes.
No,
Society of Human Resource Management?
yeah, it stands for Society for Human Resource Management, but they don't have the word for in there. So it's just SHRM. And a lot of people say shroom. It's not a mushroom. It's actually SHRM.
Love that. So again, one of the things we like to do in this podcast is you've been listening through, we always end up with these little nuggets and gems of places to look and associations to be a part of. So I'll make sure I jot down those notes as we go. But you'll see that in the show notes. It's Society for Human Resource Management. So if you have a background, what would it take to speak at a conference or an association around SHRM or something similar to that? When you were back in that world, and you still are to a bit, how would I start moving myself into maybe being a candidate to be part of a conference or a breakout or something like that with these guys?
Super good question. And one of the reasons why that's good is because after I was the programs chair there, I ended up speaking at our state conference probably 5 times, and I will again this August. They've asked me back again, which is really thrilling, and I'm so pleased to receive those invitations. I've spoken at SHRM conferences in probably 6 other states. And the way to do that is probably twofold. You either get well known enough that they seek you out and they say, will you come speak at our conference? And the other way is that most of those state conferences will post a call for speakers probably around 8 months prior to their conference. So watching their website is a really good idea. And then look at what the criteria is for that call for proposals and answer that call. So it's really going to be for people that have human resources related topics and things that are going to resonate with human resource professionals and that can be certified for recertification units by the Society for Human Resource Management and the Human Resources Certification Institute, 2 different entities.
My goodness, that was a lot to unpack, but let me ask a quick, really important qualifying question. So there's a lot of associations out there that are like this, where they're looking for CE credits, essentially, right?
True.
So it needs to be in your industry. So if you have an industry background, like you have a human resources background, what kind of things would you teach or speak on at a SHRM conference? And would that be CE-able?
Yeah.
For
a
credits?
lot of those things that surround human resource related laws, employment laws, leave of absence types of things, hiring, firing, benefits related, all of those kinds of things are really, really important, and how to be more innovative and how to do employee engagement programs within your website. Not website, within your workplace. All of those kinds of things are really useful for HR professionals. Training, different types of trainings. Mine are around cultures of learning, strategic thinking, accountability programs, team building.
Okay. So now we're getting to the fun stuff, because when you start, and here's my concern sometimes too with speakers is there's a lot of us out there that are, we're speaking on leadership, on corporate culture, on team building, on motivation, et cetera, conflict resolution. There's a lot of topics I have, and probably you do too, that you could fit into many different cultures, right?
True.
If you have a conflict resolution, let's say, you could bring that to a parenting conference or to a human resources conference. Is everything that you do with them certifiable, or as far as you can do credits for it? How do the soft skills work? How do, shifting culture or conflict resolution? Let's say if I'm not, I don't know, like maybe I'm not part of the organization. I just want to go speak at this conference and bring a soft skill or one of the keynotes I would do. Is that even possible? Or does every speaker at a conference like this have to fall into the category of continuing education?
It has to meet certain criteria that they think that their attendees are going to want to spend money to go to a conference for.
Well, that's okay. That's okay.
Pardon me?
Like that one's okay, right? Because that's about selling a topic that they really think their attendees will want versus some technical topic that they need to know, if that makes sense.
Well, they can take all of the topics that are submitted, and if they find interest in them, they will send the entire package of topics to the Human Resources Certification Institute and to SHRM and ask for the entire conference to be certified for 12 and a half hours.
Okay, good.
That's really what happens there. So it doesn't necessarily have to be program by program. I have done mine program by program because I sell them, so to speak, to other audiences as well. And I also sell them to non-HR audiences, so leaders and managers and so forth that really don't care about human resources recertification. So it can be things like that. But they will take something that you have, Matt, and I think that they would find that very interesting because those skills in NLP can really be useful to human resources people. Just like you take them to leaders and you take them to you might take them to salespeople.
Certainly.
Right?
Well, and that's one of my problems as a speaker is, having to niche down and say, this is the one topic for the one demographic, because my natural tendency, and I know a lot of you listening, you fall into this category. I don't want to be labeled. I don't want to miss out on an opportunity because I'm too niche down. So maybe we can have that conversation. What's your take, Stephanie, about being super niche down as a speaker, where you say, this is my topic, or these are my 3 talks, this is who I go for. I do sales kickoffs, or that's my thing, or whatever it is, versus because that's going to close off a lot of options. But at the same time, how many options are out there, right? If you close down a lot of options, the ones that are open are really going to see you as the person for them. That's potential too. What's your take on niching down tremendously to serve that target speaker platform place versus trying to be a little more versatile and fit into different places?
I think more and more people are needing to be really niched. I think some of the real experts out there have their audience and they speak really, really well on certain topics. So they might have 2 or 3 keynotes or 2 or 3 workshops or something like that, but they have really targeted, this is my group. When you look at some of the speakers' profiles and they have 40 different things.
Yes.
I can't help but look at that and go, how good can they really be in any one of them? You cannot be the jack of all trades or the Jacqueline of all trades. To me, that's kind of being the master of none. So like what you see with me, I have 3 main topics, and my audiences are pretty narrow. They're HR, they're leaders, they're managers, for the most part. Occasionally, and we might talk a little bit about reinvention, occasionally I do get requests to go back to doing my domestic violence work. And it's not something I market much anymore, but when I'm asked to do it, I love serving that audience because it was something that was really, really meaningful to me, and it helped lots and lots of people, which I'm really grateful to have been able to do. But in terms of niching, I think it's important to do that, to really find your place and go for it.
Well, and let's take that opportunity for a cheap plug too. So when you were doing your domestic violence work, and good on you for doing that too, because it's just there can't be enough awareness and beyond awareness, tools and strategies and education to shift, how different cultures view this. You have a book that's a true crime memoir that came out called Serrated,
Mhm.
and tell us just briefly about that and where can we find that on Amazon or wherever books are?
You can find it on Amazon. Yeah.
Go Amazon. I never get a
And
no to
through
that
my
question.
website. Serrated was written in 2010 by myself and a woman named Tracy Stombrace. And Tracy suffered a hellacious attack of domestic violence. She'd had an ongoing uh, issue with domestic violence in her marriage, and really always knew he would kill her someday. And he would say that, I'm going to kill you someday. Well, the day came when he tried to kill her. He stabbed her and cut her some 40 times.
Oh
Her
my
mother
gosh.
intervened, which I would never recommend you do, but she was a mom. I mean,
Well,
moms
what
do what
mom is not
moms do,
going to? Yeah.
but for her heroism in trying to save Tracy, she lost her life.
Oh gosh.
And so the real crux of the story is that Tracy's ex-husband only served 12 years for aggravated assault and kidnapping. Yeah, so I can see your eyes go wide. You're like,
My
what?
eyes are wide if you're on video. What?
Right, right. And so that is really the story. It's really about the justice system and how the justice system that we have so much faith in can truly fail people. And about trying to get really a message out there about how people can end up in a domestically violent situation, and really how to not be so judgmental about people in those situations. There are really several different messages in the book.
My goodness. Well, listen,
Yeah.
uh, if this sparks something in you, or if it strikes a chord, grab the book Serrated, and walk through that true crime memoir. It's a fascinating story, certainly, and it gives you a good eye into, like you said, Stephanie, the justice system. So that's available on Amazon. We'll have a link in the show notes so you can check out the book. Also, you can find it at stephanieangelo.com. That'll be in the show notes. Since we're doing plugs, you can also find more about stephanieangelo.com. LinkedIn is Stephanie Angelo, SPHR. That link will be in there as well on her LinkedIn. And Facebook is High Stakes Mastermind. Stephanie, also, in addition to speaking, you run a mastermind group, which is amazing to be able to mastermind and to have someone like you as a mentor, as a coach, I'm assuming would be extraordinarily valuable and an experience like no other.
I absolutely love it. I went through a training program for that, and I do have a couple groups. I have a live group here in the Phoenix area and want to have more than the one, but I also have a virtual group. So even for your listeners, if they're interested, I do max my groups at 6 people per group, and I do vet people. But
6.
for the entrepreneurs and solopreneurs out there, because these are business mastermind groups with people that are really, really driven to grow and exponentially change their businesses and are willing to be held accountable. They're phenomenal people too, Matt. And if you had the chance to meet any of them, you would be inspired by the different individuals in these groups. They do me honor every single day that I work with them.
That is outstanding. So you can find out more at Facebook at High Stakes Mastermind or stephanieangelo.com. Let's go into NSA culture a little bit if we can. National Speaker Association culture. So you've been the program chair for some time. I know you've been serving on the board, of course. And what I love about the NSA culture is it's very servant-minded, right? Like people who are members for any period of time, many people will serve, and it's a volunteer position. Tell me about specifically the Arizona chapter. How many speakers do you bring in a year? Do you do like 8 or 10? Probably not 12, right?
No, we have 9 programs a year because we have
9.
No meeting in July or August. So is that 10? No, it's got to be 9. Because we also have the convention that everybody goes to.
And you're in Phoenix.
And we're
want to leave the house in August?
We have a summer party, though, in August. So The first thing that pops to my mind when I think about the Arizona chapter is that we are fortunate enough to be the home chapter. Arizona is the home of Cavett Robert, who was the founder of NSA.
I did not
And
know that. Okay.
NSA, if I remember correctly, I hope I get this right, was founded in 1977. I hope that's correct, by Cavett Robert. And some of the founding members that were with him at that time are members of our chapter today. And so I think that's one of the neatest things that we can say is that our meetings take place in the national offices. Even though
Wow.
we're separate entities, we get to use that building. So that's really cool because when speakers come, they get to walk in the hallway and see all of these pictures and they see awards. And, I've never been to any other chapters facilities. A lot of them have to do their meetings in hotels, things like that.
Sure. Yeah. They
But we
just
get
have
to
a
be the
rental
home office.
facility. Oh, that's actually really cool. So listen, of all the different chapters, if you can be at the Arizona chapter, that's something that we were talking about bragging and before we went on air, right? And if you're allowed to or not, or what does it mean about you? And I told you I'm a big proponent of believe who you are and know your worth comes from who you are, not what you do. But once you realize that, I think it's really important to certainly be proud of what you've accomplished and to showcase things. And there's this piece where we have to be willing to do this. Like, I hired a media coach this year, and that's a lot of where we got the show on syndication for the radio, and we started doing a lot of TV and different things like that. But one of the little aspects he taught me, I felt so uncomfortable with this, but I had to start getting used to it. I just swallow my, what's the opposite of ego? I had to swallow my humility because I don't want to be that guy, if that makes sense, right? Like taking pictures everywhere, but I had to swallow that and say, no, I actually need to do that. So the advice was when you're going to some place prestigious, and I think the Arizona chapter totally falls in that category. It's like, get a photo on the plane when you're heading over. Get a photo outside with the logo or whatnot. Get a photo inside the hallway. If you're, when I'm going to a TV studio, get a photo when you're in front of the set with the set and the camera behind you. Like you need to be willing to use some of that prestige and let people know what you're doing. People who follow you and people you coach in your communities, we want to know, right? So
Yeah.
I try to do that. I know Stephanie does that. A lot of great influencers out there. We've learned to do that. So if you are newer as a speaker and you're listening to this, or if you've been around forever and you haven't been taking advantage of it, that's a really important thing. So I'm looking forward to a couple of days being with you. It's so cool. We got this interview perfectly scheduled just before, I think I'm flying out day after tomorrow.
Yeah. And it's so funny that you bring up the thing about taking pictures, because one thing I try to do when I pick up the speaker, either from the airport or pick them up for dinner or what have you, one of the first things I do is say, we've got to get a picture. And we take that in the car, and we also take pictures at the restaurant and, of course, at the speaking engagement and so forth.
Oh, I'm so happy you said that.
Yeah, we will. Oh, and you know what? I need to make a correction too, because I was thinking, how come I said there were 9 meetings when I said we take July and August off? That's because we also take December off. We have a party.
There's more.
So we don't have a speaker. I was like, how come my numbers don't add up?
And this is cool. So I've had a few different NSA facilitators or programs directors and so forth on the show so far. And what I found is, every chapter runs it slightly differently. So again, guys, the idea behind the show is I want you to get a little bit of insight into some of these places. I've said it time and time again, every episode. One of the best ways to advance speaking is if you want to be on stage at a national conference, if you want a big association, most associations have smaller state, regional, or local chapters. Whether it's International Association of Women, we had Carol Soloway on, shout out to Carol, or if we have eWomen Network or NSA or the Veterinarians Association or the Dental Associations, there are smaller groups out there. You got to be willing to get out to these ones, and you can really polish what you're doing. You can make great connections. And if you want to get to a national conference level, one of the best ways to do it, and Stephanie, I'm curious on your take on this, being part of an association or a couple of them at this point. My thought is one of the best ways to do that is, like, if I want to be at National NSA one day speaking at the big conference, it would be really good to speak at a dozen plus chapters and meet everyone and be known and really build relationships with people. So when I put my hat in the ring, so to speak, to be a national speaker, I'd want a bunch of voices chiming in and going, oh yeah, I know Matt. What is your outlook on that? And do you have, any tips or ideas or strategies on building yourself to be more credible, more relationship driven, to get to the point where you're on a national stage?
Sure. I think, what's really important, and I get an influx of emails from people that want to speak for our chapter. The problem is that some of them don't really seem to show us anything that would be a real useful tool for our speakers to walk away with. We want our speakers to attend a meeting and be able to write notes furiously and walk away going, I learned this and I learned this and I learned this and I can use it now. And not only did they tell me their experience of here's what I did, but they actually tell us how to do it. And when we have speakers that there's something that's too much marketing of their services,
Yeah.
that there's something that's really missing in terms of how useful it will be to our people, then it doesn't really resonate well. So you really have to, not everybody is meant for an NSA audience.
That's actually a really, really good point to bring up, too. I appreciate that. Back to that honing down, right? Hey, you don't need to be all things to all people. There are probably thousands of associations all around the world for all different purposes. Find your home, find your people, and then go after that, right?
Yeah. And for example, I had somebody who contacted me who does a lot of presentations on doing copywriting, like how to write text for your blog and all
sales
that
copy
kind of stuff, and grammar and whatnot. The thing that the person didn't understand is we have probably the best guru right in our chapter, and she gives so much of herself. That's Barbara McNichol. Now, I'm not really faulting that other person, but I sort of think that other person probably should have done a little homework first and known that we had like the guru right in our midst. So I had to just say, look, I have to decline because we have so much of this from our own person.
Well, it's redundancy, and there's a piece of loyalty, isn't there?
There is. Now, having said that, that doesn't mean that we don't look for people outside of the chapter.
Well, I guess what I mean is loyalty. And if you have someone who's an expert copywriter, they're a loyal member of the chapter, and you wanted to teach on copywriting at some point, you'd probably look to her, wouldn't you?
We would.
Right.
Same with storytelling. We would look to Doug Stevenson, who is so well known.
Hey, shout out to Doug.
Our guy. He's a member of our chapter, so it's tough to compete with Doug because he's so amazing. So I think a little homework in that regard is helpful. But you are absolutely correct that if you can start getting the rounds of chapters throughout the United States, your chances of speaking on the national platform are so much greater. And national platform can be anything from a general session to breakouts. Typically, people do breakouts like at the national conference before they end up on the main stage, to my knowledge.
Well, and that also makes sense too. So again, we're saying that at big conferences, there's the main stage, which, hey, that's amazing. But again, go back to bragging rights, go back to relationship building, go back to all these pieces. My first exposure was going to the NSA Winter Conference. And I did a breakout session at the winter conference was it Baltimore, I think, right? Or DC, Baltimore. And it was a phenomenal time. Got to start, meeting some people and whatnot. And I my first exposure to the culture. But when I talk about it, the neat thing is I can meet someone and say, "Oh yeah, and I spoke at the winter conference," and they go, "Oh, you spoke at the winter conference."
Yeah.
I don't have to tell them. By the way, it was a breakout room and it was a side thing and it was blah. Like, why would you qualify yourself as less than what people think you are? So don't make things up. I always believe character, be true, be honest, but always frame what you've done as important as it is, because you're important and you deserve it. And I'm saying that for me and Stephanie and everyone listening. I think we all need to hear that.
I think that's great. I ended up being programs chair a lot. I was programs chair for the winter conference here in Phoenix several years ago.
Oh,
can't even remember, maybe 2008 or 9, 10, something like that. And we have so many people that submit, and we look at so many videos and so forth. And a lot of those people were not really known at the time and have gone on to do amazing things with their careers since then. And it's really, really gratifying to be able to see that happen for people, to watch that growth.
It's so beautiful. It is, especially having been around for so long, being able to, like you said, just to watch people grow and to say, you know what, it's cool to give someone a starter. It's cool to be part of that. Let's go back to when you said you get so many requests. If someone wanted to cut through the fat, so to speak, and be able to connect with you, right? What what kind of approach works? What doesn't work? Should I go in to send a cold email and say, "Hey, Stephanie, I'm Matt, and I should be a speaker"? How? So for me, for instance, I always say this: like I'm big on relationship, and I want to build relationships. But if I don't know you at all, how do I convey my authenticity? How do I get a hold of you? How do I make a connection? What are some of the things that have worked? If that you've met speakers and you thought, oh, I really like them, or I'm going to book that person, versus times when it didn't work very well. And you don't need to name any names, but I'm just curious, do you have any stories maybe of something this is great or this was horrendous?
Uh-huh. So there are a couple
She's
ways
laughing.
that people can connect. I do get a lot of cold emails,
Yeah.
unsolicited emails, lots of them. And I do go through them, and I either have to say, yeah, let me take a look. And, some of those have really panned out for the person. Some of them have had to be rejected. Sometimes it's something as simple as the slate is already full, and we say, let's just keep you in mind for next year, and I'll forward your information on, or so forth. That is one way. Another way is how I came to know you, Matt, which was a referral. I
Mhm.
happen to be having a conversation with Lynn Murphy that you know, and I know. I've known Lynn for many, many years, 15, 20 years. I don't know, but it's been a
Oh,
long
wow.
time. She's a wonderful person.
Can we shout
She,
out to Lynn Murphy right now? Lynn is just an amazing human being. So Lynn, thank you for the
yeah,
connection. This whole episode is actually Lynn's fault. So thank you, Lynn.
well, sheesh, let's blame her for all kinds of things because she led me to you.
Let's blame her for all the fun we're having.
She had many good things to say. I went and I looked at your website. I studied you a little bit before. You didn't even know this, but after I studied you a little bit, I thought, you know what, I'm going to reach out to that person. So that's really, really important, is being good enough to have that kind of word of mouth. The other thing that happens, Matt, is we literally go shopping at conferences. So last year I had the slate fairly full, but had deliberately left some slots open so I could see what was happening at the NSA convention. And some of the people I contacted after seeing them either on stage, or a relationship was built, or something like that. Mhm.
So you would go to the NSA conference specifically, and
Yeah.
you see people speaking main stage or breakout, and you say, you know what? So I'm serving on the board for the Arizona chapter. We'd like to have you come out, and you'd actually approach them.
Yes, exactly. And I'll go back to answering the other part of your question, which was, you said something about what gets people like unqualified or takes them out of the running.
Yes.
So there's where
What
the
not to
juicy
do.
stuff comes in. I I had a couple people that were recommended to me, and I shopped them just like you. I looked at their websites and I did all that, and then I reached out to them and we started a dialogue. But when it came time to saying, okay, let's go with this, I need to get your, I would say your bio, I would need to get the outline of what you're going to present, blah, 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 blah. And here's when I need it by.
Yes.
I wouldn't get it. And I would send them 2 or 3 reminders and I still wouldn't get it. And after about 3 times, I'm done because I have way too much to do. This is volunteer for me. I have a life. I have my own job that keeps me super, super busy. And there are way too many interested speakers for me to continue messing around with people who cannot respond. And the deadlines are always fairly generous. I mean, if I say, send me your bio and you've got 2 weeks, that really is something that a person should be able to send me in 2 minutes.
Right. Like
Right?
if you're trying to get book speaking, you should have the stuff ready. The only
Exactly.
potential, I don't know, I guess exception I could think of is if you're having a conversation and you come up with, you know what, this is a talk that's different than normal, but I think this is what the audience wants. Great. Let me work on writing that up. Right. If you have to do something that's fresh or custom, but even that shouldn't really take that much time, would it?
No,
'Cause
no,
you'd have the speaker intro, you'd have everything else ready to go as well. So don't
exactly.
forget to follow up, honor deadlines.
Yeah, and one of the things is you have to treat an NSA chapter like any other client. And I cannot believe that some of these people would do that to their own clients, right? And so that is it's a super, super red flag. And I just absolutely don't have time to continue messing with that. So I sort of fired a couple of people.
And I can see doing that. I love that. I'm going to write that. I wrote that in the notes here too. Treat local chapters just like your high paying clients.
Yeah.
Because, and here's the truth, right? Like they could become even higher paying clients in a roundabout way, especially if you have any programs, products, or services. Uh,
Mhm.
a local chapter of any organization. What if you had 1, 2, 5 clients that came from that audience that you followed up with down the road? And
Yeah.
I don't know what you charge for your services, but is it 5,000? Is it 10,000? Right? So you can get paid $5,000 for a keynote talk at a corporation, or you might actually earn $50,000 from down the road lifetime client value. And it was all from one connection, one talk at one local place that you treated them like royalty, not like paupers because, oh, it's just the Rotary Club, or whatever it is.
Yeah, because you and I
No offense
talked
to the
earlier
Rotary Club.
about
It's great.
we had talked earlier about people whose careers we saw flourish because they got a chapter opportunity and then they got a small winter conference or something, and it built and built and built. Why would you ever take an opportunity like that for granted?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So strong character, and great management leadership skills. Let's kind of as we wind down our time together. I know I gotta let you get running with your life and everything. There's so much to do. You said yourself, it is such a busy time right now, and I know that's certainly true. Um, any final advice from the speaker side, not as a promoter, but something maybe that you've grown your business? You've been doing this for 15 years, as you said earlier in the show. What is something what's a strategy or a way that has been maybe a breakout strategy for you, a way that, I don't know, how you booked a new type of a client, or um, uh, when you raised your prices a certain way? Is there any, I don't know, any kind of ninja strategies that you've been able to leverage or utilize as a keynote speaker and a successful one at that?
Ninja strategies. Well, it's interesting because I had to get out of my own way. I still have to get out of my own way a lot.
Don't we
I'll
all?
admit that, having the self-esteem, like, oh, should I do this? But when I just said, here's my price, I surprisingly did not get pushback. And that was a really cool thing. And I think that's part of the thing that we have to really get a little bit more comfortable around. Some people are naturally very comfortable around that, and I give them kudos. But there are a lot of us, maybe more of us than not, that really have to get comfortable with that idea of saying, here's my fee, and just being comfortable with getting that right out there. And I've actually had like a bureau say to me, well, I originally offered you X, but can I now offer you at X? And it's actually a couple thousand higher. And I'm like, well,
Why do they do
sure,
that?
go for it. So that has been really a
Why would they do that? What happened? Because that's, I mean, that should be the whole title for this show, is how to get people to offer you more than your normal fee. What what kind of circumstance is it? Well, I had this fee, but I'd like to give you more. What causes that?
I wish I had a really good answer. I can only think right now, and maybe in the middle of the night I'll think of something different, but I can only think right now that what I had to offer was really precisely what the client was looking for.
Yes.
And it answered all of their needs in terms of the stories that I could tell, in terms of the value I could provide. It was everything that they needed. And I think that they just were willing to pay for it. And so they didn't want to lose the opportunity. Let's get this person, let's get the speaker while we can, because if we don't nail it right now and pay the fee, we're going to lose this opportunity.
Do you remember the time frame, or even like the mental or emotional part of when you started raising your fee? Like, do you remember a particular time when you said, "Well, I'm a speaker and this is my fee," and then you knew that it was time to raise it as a generality? Do you remember a time when you did that? And if so, how did that feel? And how did you feel confident about it? When you went to that next client and said, "Well, actually, my fee is this."
Mhm.
Do you relate to that at all?
I do. There have been times when I've been shaking in my shoes, and other times I've been confident. And I think that the times that I felt comfortable were the times I just said, "Oh, what the heck," to myself and let's just do it, because what's the worst that can happen? The worst that can happen is they say no, and then we might get into some sort of negotiation and we say, well, then I will take this out of the program and we'll just have it be this much. And you have these options built in or something of that nature. Most of the time, Matt, I just thought, oh, what the heck? And was surprised with myself that it was accepted. And I thought, well, if I can raise it to this and it's getting accepted, then in a year I can raise it to this and it will be accepted. I can raise it to this and it will be accepted.
And isn't it funny how we put on those time frames for ourselves? Like, well, in a year I'll be able to do this. Well, like if it got accepted today, for me, I think, so I do a lot of coaching as you do and masterminding with business owners, entrepreneurs. And one of the biggest things is around pricing. They say, well, what should I price myself at? And the first thing I notice is almost everybody prices themselves too low. And number two is pricing is internal psychology more than is external psychology. It's not about, yeah, you have to lay it out the right way and say, here's what I do and here's the value I bring. And this is, you find out what they need and so forth. But when you lay your price out, it's internal psychology. It's how do I feel about this? Do I believe this is a good price for me? Mm-hmm. Is this a good deal for them? Because your voice, your tonality, your posture, it's going to betray you if you don't believe that. So I think that's a pretty darn important thing. And I need to work on that myself for my keynote fees, because I'm like, I can charge a lot for private coaching now because I know that. But I'm so used to my background. That's why I love talking to you guys, especially keynote speakers and people in those organizations. I'm a platform speaker by trade, right? So I grew up kind of cutting my teeth, so to speak, in the speaker world, 2006, 2008, on multi-speaker like sales platforms. And I didn't have a choice. That's kind of where I got thrown in. And they said, hey, if you can sell a $2,000 product after an hour speech, then we'll have you on our stage. And I'm like, okay. So I had to figure out how to do that. So I always came from that angle. So for me, my psychology personally is trying to really wrap my mind around a $5,000, $10,000, $15,000. This is my speaker fee and this is why and so forth. Do you have any advice for someone like me, Stephanie?
Well, I wouldn't really get locked into the time frames. We did say, well, next year I'm going to do this and the year after I'll do that. Sometimes it can really fluctuate, Matt. It might be in 6 months you change things again because you find a demand. It took a long time to kind of resonate with me when people would say, do what your clients are asking for, do what the world is asking for. And I had to listen to that for a while. And so I think, Matt, when people start to really ask you, well, what else can you do? And I'm really interested in this. And can you help me with this? Do you know about that? It kind of opens up some more channels while still staying in your vein. Because remember, we talked about not being way too diverse. Because that's going to confuse people about who you are.
Right. So almost like you can bring the diversity and topic into the conversation afterwards. So like they already know you're an HR specialist on whatever topic, let's say. Mm-hmm. And then as you're talking, they might go, gosh, that's actually really good. So could you do something on conflict resolution? And you go, oh, yeah. Absolutely. And now you're talking custom in a conversation versus up on your website as one of your multiple topics. Is that kind of what you mean?
Kind of. To that note, I worked in domestic violence for so long that I know.
I'm sure that would be one of your topics.
it can be conflict resolution in a really softened manner, really changed. But when you can experience and deal with that, what happens between people at the workplace, we can modify to that sort of thing, or facilitating mastermind groups where you've got different opinions and so forth. Yeah, really looking to work with people in that manner. So for somebody like yourself, there are probably so many things that you do that you may not have realized actually can overlap to other areas. Like I never knew that you worked in sales before. Wow. Now that gives me a whole other avenue I could talk to you about someday.
Yeah, that's really good. One of my friends is a Olympic athlete keynote speaker, and he says that about 70% of his gigs are sales kickoffs, but he doesn't really advertise doing sales kickoffs. Right? His topics are something different, but then they go, "Oh, actually, that would be great for our sales team. Can you do that?" Yeah, of course I can. And now he gets that. So I love the advice of be specific, but also be willing to customize through a conversation. Stephanie, as we wind down for the final thoughts here, if you had just one piece of advice for a you 15 years ago, what would it be?
For
What would
me,
you tell the
15
younger you?
years ago,
The 12-year-old you?
the 12-year, yeah. Oh gosh, I won't tell you what I'm going to be on my next birthday. You know the first thing that comes to my mind when you ask me that question is I didn't really understand what people were saying with certain things. Let's just take, for example, the phrase, do what your clients are asking for. It
Yes.
didn't really resonate with me. And so I was afraid to really ask deeper questions. What does that mean? How do I go about it? And so I think that my advice to listeners would be, and it's funny because I even have this on one of my mastermind groups, the private Facebook group that we have. Our private group, the banner says, ask more questions. And so that's what I would say to your listeners is ask more questions. If something doesn't really resonate and you think that the speaker's trying to tell you something, but you're not getting, well, what do they mean by that? Ask more questions. Field it more out there, not only with them, but with others.
What great advice. And I think in any sales conversation or any service-oriented place, always if we can ask more questions, be more curious, and quit trying to have all the answers. Get curious about what somebody needs and then find it and give it to them. Great advice. Stephanie, thank you so much for coming on the show. I really appreciate your time, your candor. You've been such an open book and I'm 13.
The 12-year-old you.
That's the 12-year-old me says, thank you, Stephanie. Thank you so much. So Stephanie Angelo, everybody, again, NSA current programs chair for the Arizona chapter, former chair for the SHRM Society for Human Resource Management, member of Toastmasters, international speaker. You can check out Stephanie's book on Amazon, the book Serrated, and you can find out more about her high stakes mastermind group and her coaching and her speaking. If you want to look at booking someone who kicks butt in HR, go to stephanieangelo.com. And her Facebook page is High Stakes Mastermind. If you want to follow up on that, I really encourage you. Stephanie is a person of substance, of strong character, and a huge heart and willingness to serve and help others. I think you would be blessed to have her as counting her as a mentor and a coach. So thanks again, Stephanie, for coming on the show. I sure appreciate it.
I have had so much fun talking to you, Matt. Thank you so much for just asking me to be with you today. Thank you.
All right, guys, that's the show today. Remember, if you haven't already subscribe so you'll make sure you get each and every episode. They come automatically. You can have them downloaded to the device of your choosing. We're on iTunes, Spotify, Stitcher, iHeartRadio, Google Play, Podbean. Wherever you get podcasts, you can get this. You can also see a little more animated active video version up on YouTube and up on our Facebook accounts. So make sure you subscribe. Be a part of this Speaking of Getting Booked clan. More to come later. As usual, I'm looking forward to seeing you on stage.